Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we'll be talking about the Gospel Coalition arguing against seeking religious exemptions for the COVID jab. So, that's what we'll be talking about today. But don't forget to like the video and also subscribe to the channel because you want to help those magical YouTube algorithms promote content like this that YouTube certainly will not. So let's dive right into this article. It's written by a lawyer, John Melkin. Why your employer can deny your religious vaccine exemption. And he has religious in quotes because, he doesn't believe they're legitimate. And that's basically the argument that he's saying. I'm not going to read all of this because he gets a little he itemizes certain objections that he disagrees with. He says, to be clear, I'm not arguing Christians should be vaccinated or that Christians should necessarily acquiesce to employer vaccine mandates. I'm only arguing that Christians shouldn't demand religious exemptions if they choose not to be vaccinated. And he basically asserts that he's seen a bunch of these requests and none of them, he doesn't think any of them meet the merit. And this is where worldview, I think, comes into play. First of all, he's a lawyer, so that should tell you a little bit about how his view of the law is skewed to what's taught in law school and what's taught by the courts. And unfortunately, we live in a society where courts think that they can make law, and that's not how law was designed when this country was founded. Moreover, we can talk about how all judges are politicians. All judges are politicians. So, if a judge is ruling against a religious exemption, it's because they're a politician that was already against it and already a branch Covidian, not because they actually care about the merits of the arguments. They're politicians. Their minds are already predetermined on these issues. I mean, we can also talk about abortion, where it doesn't matter what law, whether it's the Texas law or the Mississippi law. If it gets to the Supreme Court, it's already a predetermined case based on the personnel that's going to be deciding it. It doesn't matter about the merits of the law or even the arguments presented. It's really about who's going to be voting on it. So that's how we need to think of judges. They are politicians. They do have a job to do, and I think lawyers don't really understand that or don't want to admit that. So let's also dive into the fact that if an employer denies a religious exemption, it's not because they actually think that it's not because they're taking the law seriously. It's because they're wanting to force the vaccine on people. So they probably don't care whether it's a legitimate exemption or not. They will still deny it anyway. So that's what's going on in these situations. And it's unfortunate that it is going on, and probably in a lot of these healthcare and public sector jobs is where this is happening. But let's not pretend like it's because of the arguments being presented in these exemption request forms. I think that's a fallacy. I don't think that's what's going on. I think it's because they reject it because they want to reject it, not because of the merits of the arguments presented in. They said, oh, you got a religious exemption. That's not good enough. Get a lawyer. And, they can play that game. And that's what I think these companies are willing to do. Because, who are these judges? I mean, even Amy Coney Barrett, who Trump nominated to the Supreme Court, was a branch Covidian pretty much. And she was a COVID Karen. So that was a big red flag that, was probably indicative that she could be a disappointment. So we got to keep these things in mind. So I want to skip down to the end because I don't want to go through all his objections with generic religious exemption forms. Because, again, he talks about the 1 Corinthians 6:19, which he says is being exegetically used out of context. I don't exegetically use it out of context because it's not about not harming your body. It's about your body belongs to God, not your employer. So I think that's, again, goes back to the personal autonomy, which, is, necessary, is sustainable as a religious objection. And again, this has to do with courts not caring about the issue. And we've seen the Supreme Court already not care about the issue. So basically, the argument that he has is by seeking religious exemptions, you are putting religious liberty at stake. That's the argument that this lawyer is trying to make. And I think that's a fallacy because religious liberty is already dead in the United States when the government said, we're shutting down churches, and all the churches said, okay. That's when religious liberty died in this country. Let's not pretend that religious liberty is alive and well in this country. It died then. It was already dying, and then it died right there. Right there. It died right there because, churches didn't care about the issue anymore. Collectively, they did not care about the issue. Instead, they want to comply with things like you can't sing, or you have to wear a mask, or you have to socially distance, or you can't have congregations of this size. And they complied with that. And then they decided that we're going to go to courts over this issue. And it's like, no, the courts don't have any say over this issue. They should have just blanketly defied anyway. And it's good that people like John MacArthur, had funding from a different organization that bankrolled a lawsuit that, ultimately prevailed. It's good that that happened, but we shouldn't be relying on courts to exercise our religious freedom. That's the point that I'm making. And because largely churches were, that means that religious liberty is dead. That's what that means. If you need courts to determine whether you have rights, you don't have rights. So, treating religious exemptions... Okay, so there's more at stake here than whether any particular religious exemption request is approved or denied. No doubt many employers are rubber stamping these to avoid labor shortages. The real problem is that when Christians present contrived demands for religious exemptions, they risk jeopardizing the whole undertaking. And again, I think we're already past that being an issue. And again, just as employers are rubber stamping the yes, they're also rubber stamping the no. I think my employer personally will rubber stamp yes. So that'll be interesting when that issue comes into fruition. But others will rubber stamp no. Because they want to bully you. They want to bully you. They don't care about the arguments. They will rubber stamp no. How many companies out there are actually evaluating the merits of it? I don't think many are. Are they really going to have lawyers bill them so that they can determine whether these are viable to fight or not? Is that really what these companies want to do? So moving on, treating religious exemptions like a wild card to be played whenever we don't like the rules cheapens the concept and encourages backlash. Indeed, courts are already rebuffing COVID-related religious exemption requests, creating a harmful precedent that would be used against Christians in future cases. Again, religious liberty already died, and courts largely upheld that death. Only in the end, when, the Supreme Court shifted with the death of Ginsburg, did that really change. Meanwhile, gospel-minded Christians are face-to-face and already facing an onslaught of legislative and judicial actions directly threatening their ability to evangelize, teach, discipline, counsel, and associate according to their cherished convictions. Why imperil the vitality of religious exemptions when they are about to be needed the most? Really? I don't really understand what he's saying here. Maybe this is more clear in the hyperlinks. So this is about the Equality Act. And then this is about transvestites and that stuff being forced in the workplace. And again, he's not thinking this through. The issue's already determined. They will make it legal. And if you obey the Equality Act, which, let's call out the Gospel Coalition for doing what it's doing. Let's call out the Gospel Coalition for a second. They've been promoting the whole Fairness for All Act, which is basically the Equality Act with religious exemptions in churches and religious organizations. They get the religious exemptions. No, the Equality Act should be routinely denied, and no quarter for any of the components of it. No quarter for any of the components. And all these fake Christians out there are trying to soft pedal that middle ground compromise position called the Fairness for All Act, which is heavily promoted by the AND campaign, Justin Gamboni, and people like that. So let's just call that out. Esau McCaulley, I believe, is another TGC writer. So let's just point that fact out. But we must stop government intrusion now, some will say. Maybe so, yet asserting flimsy demands for religious vaccine exemptions will have the opposite effect. It's a short-sighted strategy that will end up fueling government overreach, not curtailing it. It's like mowing over dandelions in your grass instead of digging them up at the roots. If you loathe COVID vaccine mandates, as many do, then engage in public advocacy, use politics, and vote with your feet. But if you care deeply about religious liberty, please think twice before demanding a religious exemption. Now, if you look at this guy's article history, he has never written on the relationship at Gospel Coalition. But again, he's an attorney for a religious organizations group. He's not exactly a Gospel Coalition regular. He's written like 2 articles total, but none of those articles address the issue of lockdowns. So again, religious liberty is already dead. So we should fight every battle, every hill. We missed out on the hill to die on. The perfect hill to die on was on March 16th, 2020. That was the hill to die on right then. Right then. It's like, no, we're not shutting our churches down. Everyone do that in unison. The lockdowns would have ended quickly. Quickly they would have ended. Because they would not have been enforceable. It would have been America. It would not have been enforceable. But instead, that's not what happened. And, if we don't treat these hills as hills to die on, it won't be the next hill. It won't be the next hill. That guy's not going to die on that next hill. He's not going to die on the Equality Act hill. I smell he's a squealer. He's a squealer, and he's going to bend on that issue just like he's bending on this issue. No, fight every battle now so you don't have to fight them later. Or you can actually make grounds. You can actually make gains. Like, there's no reason not to fight the religious exemption fight now. This is a naive thought that we can preserve religious liberty, which is dead, by basically not fighting for religious liberty. That is a stupid argument. Let's suspend the free market to save the free market. We need to raise taxes after read my lips, no new taxes. Like that's how bad of a strategy this is. Don't listen to that strategy. So that's all I got to say about that. I wanted to keep this video short, and I think I accomplished that. My name's Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. If you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. And if you really like this content, support Evangelical Dark Web over at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. And also check out that website. That website has articles popping up almost every day. And just subscribe to that RSS feed as well, so you don't miss out, because these videos have a companion article piece, and sometimes the article piece is better, sometimes the video is better. Depends on the given day, the given topic. So again, check that out. Let me know what you think about what I think, and I will catch you on the next one.